more time. So how have things gone over the Christmas break for you with living out these practices, this rule of life? Any thoughts, observations? I can start. For me, it was hard. I traveled a bit, saw some in-laws. Much of the rule of life got left behind in those travels. Um, Anyone else have a similar experience?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I would say all of that I did as well, Phil. Plus, when for me, I had 4 or 5 nights when I was actually staying with my son's in-laws in an Airbnb
Yeah.
with 2 kids and, uh, a little baby. And so there was a lot of just irregularity in my life. And so it's difficult.
Yep.
Uh, to keep that when you're not eating on any routine basis, so you can't even say, well, I have a lunch routine time. Uh, I tried to take some walks outside where I could listen to a sermon. Even on Sunday, there was not even a church nearby that I wanted to go to, so I walked outside to go to church to listen to a sermon on Sunday. So it was just it presents a lot of different issues.
Yep. Yep. I see a lot of nodding heads. Life happens, right? And what we've been finding over the years here at Habitus is that when our regular routines are disrupted, it's really difficult to maintain the practices in our rule of life. So things like travel, even when our work or school schedules are changed, I mean, just maintaining those regular rhythms and schedules, it's hard. And it's not only the change, I think, in schedule, it's like what Sharon mentioned. Sometimes it's a different space or a different place that's disruptive, You're in someone else's home or you have a bunch of people in your own home, and yeah, that just shifts things enough. And all of a sudden it feels like the rhythms that you established, they're gone. And I think what we got to realize, first of all, is let's be really gracious with ourselves in this, right? Because this is not about perfection. This is about practice. This is about progress. And I think it's okay to recognize there are seasons or weeks in our life or moments when we travel where we're just not going to be able to do it. And I think it's just really important to name that reality, because what can often happen is maybe you miss a practice and maybe you feel a little twinge of guilt, and then over time this weird dynamic comes in where all of a sudden you might rush through whatever practice just to check it off. I did it, and all of a sudden these practices turn into a to do instead of a place to encounter God, and that's just a dynamic to beware of. But I think seasons like Christmas, holidays also provide us with helpful data about who we are as humans. And I think they show us we really do need structure to our living. A structured environment is really important for facilitating a regular communion with God. And so this structure of a rule of life, I think it helps organize our lives, organize our attention, organize our daily self-awareness around opening ourselves up to God. Um, and without it, I think our life with God is fairly distracted. So maybe at the front end of this new year, let me take a quick moment to refresh our sense of why. Why are we doing this? Um, I often tell people we gather as a Habitus Commons to remind ourselves, you know what, we're not crazy for doing this. So why? Why do we commit ourselves to these faith practices? And it's because we are shaped by what we regularly do. We are shaped by the habits. I'm going to share with you a slideshow here for a moment, if I can find it. Yes. Can everyone see this?
Mhm.
Okay. There is a really fine organization, the London Institute for Contemporary Christianity, and they're in London, England. And they did a study a couple of years ago, a research study among Christians in the United Kingdom. And participants, they range from 18 to 60 years of age, 60% women, 40% men. And in this study, what they were looking at is they wanted to learn about the effect of different spiritual practices on how Christians live. So, the ways people engage with various practices and what factor helped them engage with these practices regularly. And they found that practices make a really immense difference in the way people lived as disciples of Jesus. They found that a Christian's engagement with spiritual practices were probably one of the most significant influences on how they live out their daily walk of discipleship with Jesus. And they had a number of findings. They found, so here's some of the benefits in the report. If you want the report, I can happily send it to you. It increased people's fruitfulness. So, key indicators were people found that their lives displayed the fruit of the Spirit. They had a capacity to change things for the better. They found themselves acting with more grace and love in their lives. They felt a vital part of God's purposes. There was an increase across every single demographic, an increase in the proportion of people who felt that they were living fruitfully. Um, so their perception of themselves. Um, Spiritual practices grew people as disciples of Christ. In particular, two in three people felt more aware of God's presence with them in their daily life, and three out of five said they had a clearer sense of how God wanted them to act, and they prayed more for situations they were facing. It reminded people that God is at the center of things, whereas before, people had often seen God, maybe at the periphery of their day. They thought about God maybe in the morning, had a quick prayer before the day, but after that, the rush of the day sort of consumed their attention. But now with these practices in place, they had a heightened sense that God was at the center of their daily life, and participants developed a more consistent awareness of God's presence throughout the day. So there's a lot of helpful research that shows us the importance of why we're doing this. So it's good at the beginning of a new year, after maybe there was, some letting go of some of these practices, to find some ways to reinvigorate our rule of life. But the study, interesting, I think this might be helpful for us too. The study also explored what were the factors that helped and encouraged regularity in these practices. So what were the factors that helped make sure that these are just really important parts of their daily life? They found eight things that were really helpful. Finding a spot was the first. Um, Location, your environment, it really matters. So a time, a place, and a specific action, those things were really important for making sure that these practices found a really regular part of their life. So if it was they had specific times, specific places where these practices happen. Second one was flexibility. They were flexible in their practices. And I think that's really important for us. How we engage these different practices will look different in each of our lives because we're in different ages and stages. So a mom of young kids is going to practice silence very differently than perhaps a senior who lives alone and has silence all the time. So flexibility, how we engage these practices, is going to differ. So we need to each find a way that works for our life as it is, and also perhaps in the different seasons of our life. Another factor, grace. So again, as I often say, we don't do shame here. And so let's avoid perfectionism. Let's show ourselves a lot of grace. And instead, if we experience what you might call failure, see it as a learning thing. Desire was another factor that enabled regular practice, that this is less about duty and more about this desire to live in communion with God, reorienting ourselves in these practices back to that desire, just reminding ourselves, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing this, because I want to live in a sense of daily awareness of relationship with God. Simplicity, keep it simple, right? Enjoyment, how about that people learn to enjoy, to experience joy. Emotion is we're heart driven creatures, and joy and enjoyment is one of the biggest factors in a habit taking root in our lives. Again, following Jesus, it's not about gritting our teeth and grinding it out. So find ways to enjoy the practice, and to enjoy God in the practice. And then accountability, support of others is vital, and that's why we're doing this as a community. We're recognizing we need others, and that form of encouragement and accountability is critical. And then structure. As we've seen through the Christmas holidays, unpredictability really hinders our practice. So establishing this rule, establishing a regular rhythm and structure is so important. So what I'd love, we're going to break out again. In which of those 8 factors, and I'll put them in the chat really quick, which of those 8 factors are, do you find really important or most helpful for you going forward? Let me quickly copy them and put them in the chat. So I'm going to break you out into groups again, and those are the 8 factors. When you break out into groups, I'll put them in a message to the groups. But when you look at those 8 factors, which this research has shown really helpful for people to make sure that these practices are a regular part, which have some conversation. Which 2 of these factors do you think is going to be most helpful for you, or most important for you going forward, from this point forward? So let me break you out into groups again. Maybe have a 10-minute conversation around this, 15 minutes, we'll see. Welcome back.
Hi.
So, which of those factors do you think this is going to be really helpful, that I have these factors in my life, or important for me? Any thoughts?
In our group, structure and grace were pretty
Okay.
pronounced by quite a few people.
And I think they can go together well, too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
nice. Thank you, Lynn. Anyone else?
For us, it was location and structure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we totally underestimate how embodied we are as people, and how time and place is such a significant factor in making these practices a real part of our lives. That's helpful. Thanks.
For me, it's accountability, knowing that I have to be accountable to my triad. But the other thing is just desire. Like,
Mhm.
really, do we really desire to learn this, to be better at it? That's my prayer, just to increase my desire, and I'm thankful for the accountability that we have in our triad.
Mm.
Mm.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm like Colleen, like the desire.
Yeah.
Like to me, that is the first and foremost. If I don't have the desire, everything is legalistic.
Yep.
And then for me, enjoyment follow desire.
Yeah.
Like that, thank you, Phil, to remind me that I'm doing this to enjoy God.
Yes.
It's not just to enjoy the practices. It's not just for my own good, but I'm supposed to enjoy God. So thank you for the reminder, yeah, that I will remind myself too when I'm practicing all this. Thank you.
Yeah, that I think that is so important. So, I've been, sort of calling us back to focusing on these practices. Um, but all these practices are not so much aimed at a goal, right? To like fasting and that we've prayed, that we've read our Bibles. They're rather aimed at growing in us an identity. To learn how to rest in our identity in Jesus Christ as God's beloved children. I don't know if you've ever heard of this book by James Clear. It's called Atomic Habits. It's a fascinating book about how habits are formed, and in that book he notes this distinction and this really interesting connection between practices and our identity, the type of people we are. And he says that the key to building lasting habits in our lives, enduring habits, is to focus on a new identity first. And so he writes this. He says you need to build identity-based habits. So how do we arrange our lives? How can we organize the flow of our days so that we might live up to our identity as people who love God, our identity as people who love our neighbor well, so that we become the kind of people who live in community with God, who people who participate in God's mission in the world. And these practices of Jesus are that way of life, of cultivating in us that identity. So all the practices in our rule of life are really identity-based habits, practices that train us to become the people that we already are in Jesus. So it's less a focus on mechanics of, how to get the fasting right or how to do silence, and more a focus on the life of Christ we're trying to live out. Um, I think in his book, James Clear says it's the difference between, and I think applying it to our rule of life, it's the difference between setting a goal to run a marathon and becoming a runner. So I think in his book, he says one is a goal, right? You ran the marathon. So you could maybe this year, one of your resolutions, I'm going to run a marathon this year. Great. You ran the marathon. You did it. Beautiful. But the other is an identity. I am a runner. So even if I ran a marathon, I keep running. And so you can see how this is less burdensome, less prone to legalism then, right? Or comparison. Because you know what? If you run 50 meters or a 5K or a marathon, doesn't matter. You're a runner. I I heard, was it in James Clear or some other one? I heard a story of a guy who, New Year's resolution. I wanna work out. I got to get in shape. And so what he did is he began by simply driving to the gym where he had a membership, got out of his car, got back into his car, went home. And you think, seriously, what is that? And what he was cultivating in himself is, I'm the kind of guy who goes to the gym. So after a week or so of just driving to the gym, he said, I'm here now. I'll walk into the gym. So he spent another week of driving to the gym, walking into the gym, exploring it, because he's cultivating this identity. I'm the type of person who goes to the gym. And slowly but surely over time, he actually began to work out in the gym and lose the weight he wanted, and get into shape he wanted. And what he was doing was cultivating an identity in himself. So it's less about the practice, more about the identity. And these practices in our rule of life are shaping an identity, our vocation in the world. We practice Sabbath to become the kind of people who are freed from the need to achieve and perform. We can rest in God's grace. We practice regular prayer to become people who love God, who live in daily communion with God. We fast, and as we do that, it's not so much about the practice, but we're becoming the kind of people who are freed from consumption, freed who can live in contentment with God's provision. So these practices are a way for us to become who we are in Jesus. And so every time we engage one of the practice, it's like we vote for that identity of who we are in Jesus. And one of the practices that I just want to spend a little time with us before we wrap up is daily digital detachment. At Habitus here, we believe that the way of Jesus embraces all our life, including the good technologies we all enjoy, but we probably don't do enough thinking and reflecting about our relationship with these digital technologies. I don't know about you, but lately I have been finding myself more prone to stare at screens, even though, I spend so much time online at work. I find myself more and more, yeah, just using social media and sort of mindlessly scrolling through video shorts, almost more as an escape. And it one of the things that I've found most alarming for myself is my limited capacity to read more. And all of a sudden that made me very fearful. And it felt like, my phone and my screens are sort of hijacking bigger, deeper goals in my life. I don't know if you experience the same thing at all, but I think the data out there is fairly compelling. How our devices promise all sorts of entertainment and fun, but anxiety and depression rates are sky high. And even with the awareness of what it's doing to us, so many people feel helpless. And how can we develop, appropriate habits around our technology? I don't think we're getting rid of our devices, but how? And I don't want to. I love my computer. I love it that we can be connected right now. I like what my iPhone can do for me most of the time. But how can a flourishing life with Jesus coexist with these technologies? They're a significant part of our life, right? A dominant part of our life sometimes. So how do we do this? And that's what I'd love for us to just have a conversation within our breakout groups. Um, are you happy with your relationship to technology? Are you happy with your relationship with your devices and screens? And if so, can you share the wisdom with the rest of the group? Um, and if not, how would you like to change that? What about your relationship with your devices and screens would you like to change? And do you have any idea of what you might like to do about it? I just put that in the chat there. I'll send that in a broadcast again, but let's break out into groups and have some of that conversation. And I'm going to open all the rooms and send you on your way.
Hey Phil, we
Yeah.
had a question in our group because I know not everybody is back yet. The the 30-minute detachment from our phone, is that supposed to be an intentional thing, or is it just, hey, the rest of the day we realize, oh, we just spent 30 minutes walking and we didn't even use our phone. Like, is it supposed to be an intentional 30
Are you
minutes?
talking about the practice of silence or the?
Detached phone.
Oh, yeah. So that's supposed to be, and that's supposed to be an hour.
Oh, oops.
And an intentional. So the question was, is it supposed to be, is this practice of, for one waking hour, we disengage, we detach from our devices and screens? Is it supposed to be an intentional one or sort of, oh, you know what, I happened to not, look, I was on a walk. No, it's supposed to be a very intentional.
Okay.
Figure out a space, a time where you were very intentionally turn off your screens and your phones, and you're just going to remain present to people, to creation around you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, who loves their relationship with technology and has wisdom to offer the rest of the group? Anyone? Please, one of you.
I love my technology. I love it, but I hate it too. Okay? I love technology.
Me too.
That was my career, and it provides so much information and so much help,
Yep.
and for me, safety and a lot of tremendous benefits.
Yep.
Yeah, so I love it.
Yeah, we would
Would
never
hate,
want to be without it, right?
I would hate to want to be without it. Yes, I love it.
Yep.
I
My
just,
my
yeah,
kids, the only way they contact me is through texting. They don't phone, so I need my phone.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I know. So it is this love-hate relationship. Like,
It is.
yeah.
Yeah.
I really have been thrilled with part of it because living so far away from so many people that I know and love in Canada, like I remember through COVID, we had weekly Trivial Pursuit games on Zoom. And if that hadn't happened, it would have just been like my husband and I here and nothing and nobody. And just things like that. It just, and to this day, I keep in touch with people a little bit on Facebook, some people on WhatsApp, some people on Messenger. And I find it important because I still call Canada and Mississauga my heart home, even though we have a wonderful life here and wonderful church and friends and just great jobs and everything. That will always be my heart home, and we do hope to return one day. And so for me, it's hugely important to connect with people and maintain that sometimes daily with people or weekly contact because it's my friendships.
Yep.
And but then it's the remembering to put it away for the at least an hour and not just sitting there mindlessly scrolling
Mm.
too.
Yeah.
But that part of it, the other part I love. Absolutely.
Yep. No, that's one of the beautiful goodnesses of it for sure. Aaron, you look like you're going to say something.
Yeah, one thing I was gonna say is that Kendall, who is a part of our group here, is younger than most of us and probably has had more of her life experience, so to speak, having to face this sort of digital technology. But she said a couple of things that our group found really helpful. She said that she actually places a time limit on, there's a function within the phone where you can put a time limit on certain apps. And she's learned that she needs to do that to kind of automatically kick her off.
Mhm.
And then another idea that she had was she actually has the screen time widget on her home screen of her phone so that anytime she opens her phone, it kind of automatically shows her how much she's been on the screen that day. And that can be sort of a catalyst to motivate her to put the phone away again. So those are just very, very kind of minutia of details as far as strategies to minimize screen time. But our group found that really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. No, I think that's the sort of intentionality that this really does require. You got to remember these these screens and apps are developed by highly paid people who are masters of human psychology, and they are designed to keep your attention um, glued to these devices. And so you're up against something here, something significant. And Andy Crouch, who's a really good thinker on technology, talks about the proper place of technology in our lives. Like there's a place for it, absolutely. But what's the proper place? What's the appropriate place? And so our practice is one once a day for 1 hour, we intentionally rest. And I use that word intentionally, right? Rest from our screens and devices. It's a small act, right? 1 hour out of 24, but it's a renunciation. But it's more than just saying no to some of the technology. Our no to for 1 hour to screens and devices is more meant to say a yes to the life that we want to enjoy beyond that. We want to reclaim our time, our attention, the fullness of life beyond a screen. We want to be present to people in front of us as opposed to ignoring them, paying attention to our screens. So this no is meant to say yes to the larger life. So it's not so much about turning away from technology as it is turning towards something deeper, towards a life of greater intention, of richer relationships, a stronger sense of hopefully freedom. So, yeah, for one waking hour, find some way to figure those proper place for those phones and screens. Um, you call it a daily tech Sabbath. I don't know what it is, but yeah, think very intentionally about it. Any final thoughts on digital detachment?
Does it have to be the same time every day, Phil, or can it be 1 hour?
1 hour wherever it's going to be best in your schedule. Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, so one of the ways that I have tried to do this is for me, the first hour of my day, I don't want my phone. I have gotten away with that. I've started to take my phone to bed with me. That's not a good plan. I plan to revise that. You can ask me about it next month if I've been successful at it, okay? But yeah, I want to put my phone away so that the first thing in the morning is not what I see online. But yeah, so pick any hour and enjoy life
When you
around you.
say, Hill, when you
Monique,
said put your phone away, which including computer too, right? Because if you don't use your phone, I mean, you can go on computer and it's the same thing as well. I guess computer as well.
yep, yep. Phones, screens, devices. Yep, for sure. That's helpful. Thanks, Monique. All
Thank you
right,
so much.
you bet. Well, friends, thanks so much for being here. It is 9:15. I want to release you. We close with a blessing. And who should I pick on today? Paul. Paul, you want to close our time with our blessing? And I will share my screen here.
Absolutely.
All right, there you go. Send us with our blessing.
Right. May the peace of the Lord Jesus go with you wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness, protect you through the storm. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. May he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors.
Amen. Thank you, friends. Good to see you. Bless you
Thank
this
you.
month.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank,
Bless
thank you, Phil.
you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Good night.
Good
God
night.
bless.
Hey.
Good night.
Good night.